Yes.
not.
Well, in 1960, when I was 15 years old, my mother packed me off from Penang, go off down to Sydney, Australia to be educated. And there I was, left Singapore on the ship Iberia, went to Oak Hill College in Sydney, and from there spent 13 years, and in the process got corrupted about activism. So when Utzon resigned from the Sydney Opera House, I was out in the streets with all the other students calling for Utzon in charge. And some of the pictures you see are some of the guys that influenced my architecture. And it got me into a lot of trouble. So when I came back to Malaysia, observing what the tropics was about, we came up with the rights of the tropics, which embodies 12 mantras of what the tropics embodies. Not many people have written anything about the tropical lifestyle, tropical architecture, and in anything in architecture, the closest we got to books on architecture were by who were the Maxwell Fryer and Jane Drew, who were living in Nairobi for many years in Africa. But of course, in the tropical Malaysia, Singapore, Kuala Lumpur, and Penang, we are not in the plateau of Nairobi. So our weather here is very different. It's hot and wet. The other one is hot, wet, and more wet. So we only have two seasons. So we have to come up with our type of architecture, and it takes a lot of organization and convincing. And it's very important that in the tropics, we got to allow our architecture to be part of the environment. It has to be there with the rocks, in repose among the hills. Keep the trees, keep the hills, and that's what tropical architecture is about. And we have to be there. Then from there, we move on to the next thing, architecture without walls. In the tropics, you have a lot of rain, you have a lot of sun. So you need to have a roof. But you also want to have wind coming through. So why do you have walls? So let's have architecture without walls. And that started the whole process, which ultimately led us to winning the Aga Khan Award in 1998. A picture of me receiving the award from the King of Spain, and then that's the fantastic Malay carpenter who's only got one hand and one eye, and he was able to create that thing. Then, of course, this is a little adventure into my own hometown, Penang, up on Penang Hill, as what Mr. Chok was talking about. A most fantastic site, and we came out with something, a most exciting architecture without walls. The building was built on the terrace, but there it is. Then later on, we were recognized for all the work that we've done, as you can see from the three sort of mosaic, sort of pictorial essay award by the Singapore Institute of Architects and Gates Industries. This was in 1912. Now, in the evolutionary process, we are always going back to look at what we've done and what we're moving forward. As we said, ultimately, life is an exercise in futility. For whatever it is that we do, there is a termination. And so this is where, whilst we push forward and remind ourselves, as this graph shows, the different stages of our invisible intellectual ceiling growth. We finish in 2018, and after that, we are now moving into the new direction. And this is where my young partner here takes over. Agnes, to move to the future. Agnes, over to you.
All right, as indicated in 2018, we've completed the project as you can see on your right. Now, that sets a new benchmark for all of us. Then, early last year in 2020, we brought the zenith point back to the 0, 0 coordinates. And this is where it has propelled us further to experiment on a timber structure which has already been erected on the concrete columns itself. Now, in 2020, COVID-19 came about, and we decided to approach things very differently from our very own philosophy. So we experimented on structures in a very different way. The hornbill was extracted as a concept, only to be expressed as in the structural components, as you can see right here. So the hornbill is known as one of the faunas that is that serves as a symbol of Sarawak, where this church is actually built in. Now, in this site, it's located on top of a hill, which is very steep, and it's very sensitive. It's located in province Wellesley in Penang, and on a foothill, there's this residential enclave. It was an idea where the roof serves as one of the main idea point and the focal point of it. Now, on this Kampung Miniam, it has given us an opportunity to explore another area, to revisit and what Kampung has to capture in terms of the spirit of tradition and bringing it to modernity. Mass housing in Malaysia has lost its direction and relevance. Now it's time for us to reconfigure it, Kampung Miniam. Now I'll pass it on to Jimmy.
Now, throughout our journey, there's always been searching, going back in order to move forward. That today was yesterday's tomorrow, as today will be tomorrow's yesterday. So this is what we are doing, and we have used this as our research. So therefore, in the 2020, we start to experiment with things that disappears, canvas. That's a picture, an essay of what nature can give us, light and shade. The next moment it disappears. So these are the sort of things that we are pushing towards and see what's in the horizon. And of course, accepting and facing challenges had always been our forte and has got me into a lot of trouble. Like Joe Sidek, he says he keeps himself out of jail. I've been sued by so many people. The Chief Minister of Penang sued me because I said we must save the environment. But that's life. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.